Hi, today I'm going to show you how to change the rear latch on a Toyota Sequoia. It's a 2004 and it actually snapped on me, so I'm going to walk you through, show you the tools, walk you through step by step and what I've learned from other YouTube videos, as well as showing you how long it'll take. So let's get started. Alright, so here's some of the tools you're going to need for today's job. First, you're going to need a 10mm socket wrench with a 6-inch extension to be able to reach the 10mm bolts that are holding in the broken latch. I also found an Allen wrench works well to be able to reach up in there and actually unlock your failed latch and be able to open your tailgate. Also, you can use WD-40 or power lube to lubricate the different mechanisms and making sure that everything works fine. You'll need a pair of needle nose pliers to remove that broken latch. Also, a Phillips screwdriver to be able to remove the latch mechanism. A towel that you can place over the actual lock, so when you close the door and you're working on it, it doesn't lock but also doesn't damage the locking mechanism. Also need a pry tool, that orange pry tool on the left, or I'm sorry, on the right, that allows you to be able to pry open the different parts of trim. Lastly, you'll need some type of light, either a flashlight, sometimes an LED light for your hat works well to be able to see back in those crevices and to be able to work on that latch mechanism. Let's take a look up here, and as you can see, that is where the tailgate is actually snapped. And looking up in there, you can see that there's a piece that we need to remove right here, and then be able to reach in there and pull down on the lock to be able to open the hatch. What typically happens is that piece right there that attaches to the latch and goes to the back mechanism actually snaps right there. It's a piece of plastic on the original Toyotas, and what I've ordered here is a metal aftermarket part for $15 from Amazon. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove that part right there that's still inside the door and then be able to reach in, and by doing so, let me do this with one hand, we'll actually be able to pull that lever down, if you can see that. By pulling the lever down, that'll actually release the hatch. So first we need to remove this broken piece right here. You'll probably need to use a pair of needle nose pliers to be able to get that out. So let's try these puppies here. So you can see up here actually that I removed the broken piece that goes back. Latch obviously is still right here, but I now need to reach inside there with one of those prying tools, pull down the back handle to be able to release the hatch. But if you just reach up really high, you can see up in there the lever, and then pull it down, and it'll actually open the latch. So here's the Allen wrench I used to reach up and pull the handle down. Getting in there, I actually had to reach up and then yank it down to be able to open it. So just a simple tip as you're trying to work it, because you can't see what you're doing. First, you need to remove this handle, which is bolted down with a 10mm bolt, and we'll just work that right off. You can see we took the first piece of trim off. Came off right here. It's got these snaps that actually snap back into place, as well as I use one of these trim tools you can purchase for just a couple dollars off the internet from Amazon. So it's plastic, you can actually reach up in there and then work your way around it, and it won't scratch the surface. One note of caution is when you take off these trim pieces, that last piece will actually be interhooked right there. So you want to be able to kind of lift and then pull out. Don't force it, or else you'll snap off the hooks on the inside. You can see here what I'm talking about. These little hooks right here. So now that we've removed those trim pieces around the window, you take this monster piece off and start working that off. Okay, I chose to start here on the bottom of the tailgate. You actually see the snaps right here. They're pretty far in, so you need to really take your pry tool and work it in, and you'll hear these loud snaps, but you're not breaking anything, you're just getting these loose. So we worked around those edges, and I believe you have to scoop this up and pry it off, but let's check that out. Okay, you can see here we've removed the large back panel piece. No need to label this, but actually there are not snaps up in the top. There's just this felt lining that the rear window goes up and down on. Like I said, you had to kind of take it and hit your hand here and force it up, but it'll actually pop off. Just give it a little TLC. As you can see here, we now have the back panel to be able to work on. Popped out those two rubber grommets. They go in the bucket. And as you can see here, if you look up in there, you can actually see the mechanism. Can't see it with the camera there, but we'll see if we can't remove it from that. Okay, so you do have to take off this back panel. That's inevitable to be able to get to the snap, black snaps you see that hold the enclosure. There have been other videos that talked about actually removing this window mechanism, the mechanical mechanism. I would suggest not doing that. The whole reason they're doing it is so they can actually reach up to unloosen the two bolts that hold this enclosure. But in fact, those two grommets were designed for that and not to be able to remove this. So I'm going to leave this intact and see if I can't work around it. The other thing is that they've mentioned actually squeezing these with any of those pliers and then pushing them out so you don't break them, so you can reuse them. So I'm going to try that right now. Okay, so I've pinched those bolts, or those tabs, as you can see, and in fact now loose. You can also push through those two white tabs. There's one there and there's one in there, as well as you have a tab right there. And as I talked about, there's a 10mm bolt holding in the lock mechanism. But removing those, as well as those two bolts in those holes, should be enough then to remove the outer trim. Okay, I've actually unhooked it. You can see that I've got the back panel off. You can see the lights through there. You also have to kind of wiggle it free. You don't have a lot of slack in this cable. This cable mechanism actually goes back and attaches to the lock, but you can see that I've removed the back panel by popping those black snaps out. So it's best to do it from the outside from the inside versus trying to pull it from the outside and possibly cracking the trim unit, which you don't want to do. Another tip is to put a old towel where the locking mechanism is, so that when you close the door, it doesn't damage it, but in fact it won't close and unfortunately lock yourself out again. Okay, you can see that I've actually unhooked the trim unit. The lock is hanging there, and actually the trim unit's hanging by electrical wires holding it in for the license plate light. But you can actually see I have to remove the latch unit from there. And this is what the back of the trim looks like. So let's go ahead and remove the handle. Okay, you can see how the mechanism there is missing its little bracket which pulls down that lever, but you can see that it was attached by those two Phillips screws, and we now need to wipe that down, maybe lubricate a little bit, making sure that you can use a nice tight screw going in for the new latch. Okay, we've gotten the back panel off, we've gotten the trim off. We're about to put this little puppy here right on, and we've actually cleaned off the back trim, as well as we're going to reuse the bolt or the screws they had. This didn't come with them, but it should be fine. So let's get started and putting this back together. Okay, we've attached the new mechanism. You can see I've used the old screws, but those are real nice. This one's all metal. Okay, we lined up the trim part, snapped it back in place. It's also important that, you can see up in there, that you line that bolt up, as well as that bolt there, as those will need to be refastened through these grommet holes. And then lastly, you need to actually refasten the key mechanism as well. One thing that I should point out is that there's this plastic housing right here that goes around the cable, and you have to hook the cable on a you'll see a little hook, but then the cable comes down and there's a little notch that you should try and push it into. I try to force it in, but then this housing goes around it, I believe, to hold that cable in place just in case you know, it would come loose, and you don't want to have that happen and go back and have to put the plastic housing around the cable. Hooking the lock back, remember to actually put the lock plate behind the actual tailgate and then screw it down. Just a small note, but it'll save you some time. See that bolt that holds the latch right through the grommet hole, and you want to tighten it about halfway and then put the other one in, and then tighten them all the way down so you have a nice even tightening for both. We've got the back panel back on. We never did unhook the electrical, didn't need to, and also try the latch to make sure that it worked, and it does work. So now we'll get the trim pieces back on. Okay, next you'll want to slide this large piece back on. There's a lip right there up against the window that you want to try and catch upon, and then slide it on down. At the same time, you want to make sure that you line up the snaps so they go in the holes, and once you do, you're all set. Okay, next snap on the side panels, and then this top panel, and then we just put this in with our 10mm socket, put the handle back in, and I think we're all set. Remember that you'll have to actually attach the screws right there so that the overall insert goes back in and is held in, but those two screws for license plate also hold in the insert. Okay, so we've completed fixing that tailgate. A couple other things that I would suggest not taking apart the mechanical motor for the rear window. No need to. If you pop out those black grommets, it should allow you to be able to access the two screws that hold in the handle. You should be able to do this in, like you said, in less than a couple hours on your own time, and save yourself hundreds of dollars. Thanks.